Hi everyone, welcome to a demonstration of Fractal's agentic process automation platform. Today we'll be walking you through this platform's capabilities and the ease with which developers can orchestrate LLMs and AI agents with low-code tools. As you can see, the platform provides the following functionalities: the creation of workflows that define how agents should operate in conjunction with each other, the creation of agents and their task, analogous to how specialized roles for humans work, the creation of tools, whether it's performing fraud detection or writing a report or cross-referencing information against the database, and the creation of connections to external sources of information, such as LLMs, databases, or APIs. We'll first walk through connections. As you can see here, we have a set of predefined connections available, such as access to a database, LLMs, or APIs, and we can create new connections as needed for various business functionalities. For example, we'll create a connection to GPT-4o. We would then need to select the connection type, which in this case is LLM, but we can do the same for APIs or databases. The next page allows us to define the configurations for our connection. In the case of LLMs, this is a model name, a base URL, some API keys. The same might be the case for an API, where we would define the manner in which we would authenticate and connect to that API, as well as the same for databases. Importantly, this also allows us to test the connection, which allows developers to ensure that this connection is working prior to incorporating it within their workflows. Next up, let's go to tools. Tools are critical to ensure that agents can perform the tasks that they have been prescribed to carry out, from filling in a report or loading attributes from an invoice. Um, these ensure that agents can perform some of these tasks in a repeatable manner while also being flexible to be called as needed by the agent. Once again, we can create tools for our various business needs. For example, let's create a tool that enables claim underwriting processes to notify various stakeholders. So we define the name, a short description, and tools may be defined either as APIs or prompts that can be passed to LLMs, or a custom tool that we can fill in, such as Python scripts. Right? Similarly to earlier, we may be able to uh, test these tools to ensure that it is working as necessary for the developer. Next up, we'll look at agents. As you can see, we have here a few pre-built agents for our sample workflows, such as claims underwriting agents, claims cost estimation agents, etc. We can also create new agents for our particular business needs. Agents are the workhorses of this platform that enable users to refine what role this agent is fulfilling, what tasks it should complete, and what tools it has access to as it goes about completing these tasks. So let's define a claims assessment agent. We will define for it the goal, as in what it needs to do, as well as provide some context on who this agent is and what information it has access to in order to complete this goal. We can also choose between two types of agents, standalone agents and collaborative agents. Standalone agents are those that do not delegate their tasks to any other agent and can use tools, whereas collaborative agents are those that can delegate their tasks to other agents and can call upon them as needed. Let's first define a collaborative agent. Over here, we can detail out exactly which agents we can delegate to. For example, in this case, we may delegate to a triage agent. We will provide instructions on when to delegate this information or this task. And then we may also have, let's say, a fraud detection agent that tells us or looks for fraud in this particular claim. Post that, we will need to define the inputs and outputs from this particular agent, which tell the agent what information it will be getting in what form, and also define the outputs from this particular agent so that it knows what information it has to produce. Right? We can do something similar for the standalone agent, but in this case, we will define the task exactly as we need it. This will be a description of what it needs to do and perhaps some way in which it should do this, as well as the expected output. Again, a definition of how it should produce the output so that other agents may use the information that it provides. And then once again in the settings, we will be defining the input and output. Next up, we'll look at workflows. These enable users to configure complex processes that require multiple specialized agents. We have a few pre-built sample workflows over here, such as one for claim processing underwriting, another one for claim processing inspection. But let's create a new workflow to understand how that's done. In this case, we'll be pulling up the agents that we have defined earlier, such as the cost estimation agent, the coverage agent, the report generation agent, and the notification agent. Finally, we will chain these agents together in a graphical form so that we can define how the information flows between agents uh, using the inputs and outputs that we had described earlier in the agent page. We will save and validate this to ensure that all of the outputs are correctly mapped. We'll specify that over here, defining which inputs flow to which outputs flow to which inputs in the following agent. And then finally, we can publish our workflow and use this as needed. There are two ways to use these workflows. The first is to be able to use them from the UI itself, such as in this particular case, we have the workflow we've defined earlier. We can provide the details that would be needed by the initial agent, such as a file name, some text, an integer, whatever we've defined earlier as an input to this particular agent can be provided here. The other option is to run this in a headless manner. To be able to run this in a headless manner, we can use the workflows via our APIs. Take the example of a claims processing workflow that we've been working with. Analysts may have access to the following dashboard that showcases various claim information, such as the ID, the name of the person, the claim that they've made, and as yet unprocessed inspections and underwriting stages. Let's take the example of the first row. An analyst may come here, look at the particular policy and details with respect to the claim, and they'll click process. In doing so, we have integrated our workflow via an API, and this calls that particular workflow to be able to carry out the first stage, which is the inspection of this particular claim. As you'll see in a second, this will pop up the workflow in question and allow us to look through how that workflow is being processed, and in particular, the inputs and outputs being passed between agents. Over here, you'll see that the first agent is carrying out its processes. The input and outputs to it are clearly defined. Similarly, as we move on, we'll see that we can see the same information for the following agents. As you can see here, the next few agents have completed their tasks. We can once again look at the inputs and outputs to them if we need to check if everything is going smoothly. And once the rest of the agents have also completed their tasks, we can go back to our claims UI and then finally look at the report that the inspection report that this workflow has created. As you can see, the analyst may go through this, ensure that all the details are in place before they start the next step in the process, which will be the underwriting step. Once again, we click process. This calls another API to the other workflow that we have created, the claims processing underwriting workflow. And once again, we'll be able to see how the agents are performing and at what stage the processing is. Once again, the input agent has received its inputs and generated an output. We can take a look at the similar details for the next few agents. And then finally, once we reach the end, this workflow is complete. We can look at the output that this particular this workflow has created in our claims dashboard, as is seen here. This allows a analyst to be able to use these workflows within their existing systems via simple API calls and receive the outputs for their viewing on the same systems that they're already used to.